Well, as the Trump administration continues to implement policies of fiscal responsibility across the federal government, there is one department in particular noted for never having successfully passed an audit. The Department of Defense has yet to pass a congressional audit once since the practice began in the 1990s. Now, as the Department of Government Efficiency identifies and claws back millions in waste, one Air Force veteran is calling for DOGE to be unleashed at the DOD. Former Air Force Colonel Rob Maness, host of the Rob Maness Show, joining us now to break this down. Colonel, thank you so much for joining us. Why has the Pentagon failed to pass a clean financial audit 7 times in a row? Is it due to, I don't know, outdated systems, lack of, I don't know, political will, or is this something entirely different that we don't know about?
Yeah. Look, the Pentagon's budget's $1 trillion now. So that is a vast amount of money. Plus, it covers the Department of the Air Force, the Army, the Navy. Now we have the Space Force. We have the U.S. Marine Corps, and all of the different little agencies that go along with it. And in addition to that, the intelligence piece of it. So there are lots of places to hide funding streams. There's what's called a black budget for all the highly classified systems in development, like what happened with the B 2 bomber and the F 117 aircraft, the U 2 spy plane, the SR 71 spy plane. All of those dollars are kept basically hidden from the public, and very few members of Congress get to see them. So there's lots of opportunity to spend money on things that aren't necessarily part of the plan. And in addition to that, when you spend the money, it's sometimes very difficult to track it down. So that's why, I like that Secretary Hegseth has rightly stepped out and said, hey, we welcome DOGE. And I like the fact that we've already seen some results. The spokesman, Sean Parnell, who's a great American and combat veteran himself, went over the initial findings, but it's only $80 million. And it was stuff we expected to find, DEI spending, which that's a lot of money for DEI spending and those kind of things. But you're talking about a $1 trillion budget. We need to make sure that DOGE and Elon Musk and his team get completely unleashed into this vast network of spending money that we can't pass an audit on 7 times in a row. That goes way back into my service, which ended in late 2011 and beyond that horizon. So we've got a lot of work to do. And quite frankly, the evidence is clear. All you have to do is look at the F-35 program and see that's the largest expenditure for a platform such as the so-called fifth generation fighter. And it's well over $1.7 trillion. And that's not counting the maintenance effort for it now. And it can't even maintain more than a 55% mission capable rate when it's supposed to have a goal of around 80% mission capable rate. And this is our frontline backbone combat platform for all of our services and our allies. So keep that in mind. So we really need to take a deep dive into programs like that. We need to take a very deep dive into research and development agencies like DARPA and into the intelligence agencies, because quite frankly, our spending has not been in line with what the current president's administration's policies have been set out to be, which is to maintain defenses of our interest in American interests first before we do anything else. And that's got to be reoriented. The only way to do that is to get a handle on this budget, and unleashing DOGE is the only way that this is going to be successful, because as we can see, keep failing audits.
Yeah, I mean, but you described the Pentagon's bureaucracy as resisting scrutiny by design. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, part of that explanation is what I just laid out from an organizational perspective. But we are vastly overmanned on the civilian personnel side, and permanent civilian personnel are in positions like senior executive service officers, which are the equivalent of general officers. If you take a look at the Defense Logistics Agency, for instance, I've got a whistleblower that's been communicating with me that there are supposed to be a few general officers, but every one of them has multiple SESs working for them. So that budget right there, just the civilian personnel budget, is a huge piece to this. It's the largest part of the expenditures that you're going to see when DOGE finally does get to be unleashed in there. People are the most expensive thing that we spend money on. We need to get that civilian personnel budget trimmed down. We need to get general officer numbers trimmed down. We need to reduce the size of the overhead and increase the size of the men and women's forces that are actually going to fight and win America's wars, and cut this logistics piece out of it too. Our logistics piece is vastly overmanned in some cases and vastly under supported in other cases. Take shipbuilding, for instance. The United States Navy can't fix a ship a year, quite frankly, and NAVSEA, according to experts that I talk to. And our merchant marine shipbuilding capability is vastly under supported. As a matter of fact, the Chinese can build 340 ships a year in the merchant marine category to our one. And that is a fact. That's why the president just last night mentioned increasing shipbuilding, and he's establishing a shipbuilding office in the White House in order to get to that. So the bureaucracy over in the Pentagon has absolutely failed to get focused on what the right priorities are, and they're spending money on themselves, and they're spending money on boondoggles that we see talked about all over the place. I think Senator Paul mentioned putting steel marbles up inside animal rectums in order to test things that really don't
it doesn't
match
matter
up with the way the human body works.
Right. It's fascinating to hear you say this, because a lot of us who are, who never, spent a day in the military have no idea, and you have so much experience. How much of the waste you observed is due to inefficient contracting practices versus, defense contractors versus internal mismanagement within the Pentagon?
Well, I think that you're going to see about a third of the effort that when we look at the contracting piece of it, you're going to see waste, but you're also going to see fraud. It is not a difficult thing to defraud the American people in the defense contracting business. You've seen it all over the place. You remember the $500 hammer, the $10,000 toilet seat, those kinds of things. And a lot of that comes from the major military-industrial complex companies like Boeing, Raytheon, because they're so large and they get so many tax dollars. And the interplay between the civilian personnel system, especially, and the contractors companies, is very complex, and it's very interwoven. As a matter of fact, take a look at who's sitting on their board, and you can see the senior generals and admirals that sit on the corporate boards of these defense companies as they leave the service. And the reason why that's happening is so those generals and admirals can keep those connections of people that they mentored coming up the chain that were working in the Pentagon, et cetera, in uniform, inside this well-oiled machine that the civilians and the contract companies operate. And that's why we continue to see things like these budget or audit failures, because there's so many places like what I just described where they just keep the well and the pump running with the dollars instead of being able to cut it off. So it's that way by design. I am absolutely convinced of that. And I think if you ask anybody else that's got any experience working in the Pentagon, they would agree with
Yeah, with Hegseth now at the helm and, DOGE in play, we'll see what happens. Former Air Force Colonel Rob Maness, host of The Rob Maness Show. Thank you so much for joining us and for your insight.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.